Hello, my name is Jeff and this is the Genesis G70. On the surface, it looks like a luxury sedan. I mean, look at the exterior styling. And inside it features a quilted leather interior with heated and ventilated seats. But put the car in sport and you found the car's alter ego. The exhaust gets a bit louder, the seats tighten their hold on you. The car remaps itself and settles in for some fast driving. You see, you can't judge a book by its cover, and the G70 is no exception. It's been recently updated for 2024 and now has a starting price of $42,000. So let's see everything that this car has to offer. So what's new for 2024? Well, Genesis updated the standard equipment. Gone is the 2-liter 4-cylinder in favor of a turbocharged 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, now producing 300 horsepower. Brembo brakes are now standard for all G70 models. There are new colors and wheels, and the interior features a light refresh, most notably with quality of life updates, including a new touchscreen for the climate control system. You also get front heated seats and the frameless rearview mirror. Getting right into it, here is the key to the Genesis, which has this fun quilted pattern on it, just like the interior. The buttons are located in the sides, but of course, you don't even need to use this because the Genesis has the digital key available, meaning you can use your phone as a key instead. Moving on to this particular car, this one is finished in Bond Silver, which is this matte silver finish that looks like something you might find offered exclusively by other European manufacturers, but also available here on the Genesis. It also has this really cool dark chrome throughout that looks very sharp, and I love it way better than standard chrome. Here in the front we have some typical Genesis styling, obviously going after the wing look here, both in the Genesis badge and for the headlights and the taillights, as I'll show you in a sec. You can note all of the cool big intakes in the front, very cool interesting styling on the hood. And as we come around to the side here, we can talk a bit about the suspension as well. It's a luxury car, so you have to have a nice ride, but you also get fairly solid suspension with McPherson struts in the front and a multi-link setup in the back. But that's not all. We also have those now standard Brembo brakes, which is a very cool detail. So this thing will come to a stop quite quickly. The other thing you'll notice is that this car has these 19-inch sport alloy wheels, which are pretty sharp, kind of have this asymmetrical look, and they come wrapped in Michelin tires, which is very, very cool. 19-inch wheels in the back as well. This car is rear-wheel drive. Of course, there are all-wheel drive options. You have a little bit of a grille in the side here, more very sharp, cool body lines. We have these power adjustable mirrors with the integrated cameras for the turn signals, more sharp chrome, available sunroof options. And as we continue back, I do have to point out the keyless entry. It's just for the driver and passenger side. For luxury cars, I prefer to see it on all 4 doors, but at least you have one on each side, so it's fine there. Moving back to the car, more sharp details. For the trunk, we have this built-in swoopy ducktail spoiler, which is kind of sharp. In the back, we have more Genesis badging. The taillights mimic the headlights, which is sharp. And you actually have a power hatch, or lift gate, I guess for the trunk, I should say, here in the back, which is nice for getting things like groceries where you can just automatically pop it up as you need and get whatever you need out of the vehicle. As we take a look at the rest of the vehicle, we have a dual exhaust down below, which also happens to be a variable dual exhaust and will change based off what drive mode you're in, and a little bit of this diffuser in the back. So pretty sharp the way the styling goes, pretty standard as well for Genesis. The Genesis G70 is offered with 2 different powertrains. Standard is a turbocharged 4-cylinder, but this car features the higher output twin turbocharged 3.3-liter V6, good for 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque, and is only offered with an 8-speed automatic transmission. If you get the sport package like this car has, that gives you the limited slip differential in the back to help put the power down and send power to the rear wheels. However, for the 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder options, there is an available all-wheel drive option that you can equip if it suits your climate better. Now, with all that power, this car is still fairly heavy as a luxury sedan. It weighs around 3,900 pounds, but it achieves 0 to 60 in just 4.5 seconds, a quarter mile in 13.1 seconds, with a top speed of 170 miles per hour, meaning that this car is indeed faster than its European counterparts and makes it very impressive. We should talk fuel economy though, as well, as this is likely to be your daily driver. And this car has an EPA rated 18 miles per gallon city, 27 miles per gallon highway and 21 miles per gallon combined, meaning that if it has a 15.8 gallon fuel tank, you're averaging around 330 miles per tank, unless you can't keep your foot out of it. In that case, you're going to get significantly worse fuel economy, but at least you'll be having fun, right? You can also get some pretty good fuel economy on the highway, so if you do a lot of road trips, you'll be just fine there. Now, taking a look at the engine bay, you can see there's some added rigidity here to try and stiffen up the car. That does block a little bit of the air filters there too, one on each side of the vehicle. The turbos are also easy to see just by the cylinder head slightly below on each side of the vehicle. It has some interesting tubing here for the actual air intake, as you can see here when it runs into the mass airflow sensor. That's almost textured like. The engine cover itself, I like that it's minimal because you don't want it blocking your engine, but at the same time, it almost looks like it's better suited for a 4-cylinder. But all in all, pretty clean engine bay, looks the part, and everything seems relatively easy to access, including checking your engine oil. The other cool part is that this car has those sport modes, which will actually open up the exhaust so you can really hear this engine. Take a listen. Moving on to the interior, if we open it up, here is the interior of the G70. Quite sharp. It seats a total of 5, and this particular car happens to be finished in this, Genesis calls it a gray color, but really it looks more white with a hint of gray in person. And as I assume that this will likely scuff and kind of show wear marks. So unless you're an extremely clean person or clean your interior often, you may want to consider one of the other interior choices. But with that, before we get too far into the technology and updates, let me show you the back. So now I'm sitting in the back seat of the Genesis G70, and this has to be one of the most impressive back seats you'll find in this segment, even for four-door sedans on sale for the most part, excluding the very, very big luxury ones. Reason I say that is the seats are quite comfortable, and a lot of the fit and finish is immaculate. Like, as you can see here, these are actual lights for the rear passengers. How often do you see that in a passenger car? That's pretty rare. That's a lot of value for the money and cool for the rear seats. You also have this center display here if you don't have a third person seating in the car, and this cup holders and everything matches the front. It looks stunning, and the fit and form is just fantastic. And here we also have vents for the rear passengers and even USB chargers. Now, we do have to talk about what it's like to fit back here. Now, I am 6 foot even, and if I lay my back against the seat, my head does in fact touch the roof. So that being said, I wouldn't want to sit back here for an extended period of time. If you're shorter than me and your head doesn't touch the roof, I think you'd be just fine. The seats are otherwise quite comfortable. In fact, it's kind of disproportionate because my legs don't actually touch the back of the seat with the driver's seat set up for me. So that's kind of funny the way that works. I don't fit height-wise, but my legs are just fine. So you'll have no problem fitting kids back here or people shorter than me for longer trips. That being said, things like the transmission tunnel here in the back make it where the third seat's not really that viable except for short trips. So really it seats 4 comfortably, let's say, and the back seat, you just have to watch your height. Moving back into the front, we have these wonderful quilted seats here, which are also heavily bolstering for both the side and the legs, and the bolstering will actually tighten when you put it in sport mode, which is very cool. But notice the perforation in the quilted leather for these seats. These are, of course, heated standard, but also ventilated when you get some of the premium package offerings, and power adjustable with memory settings found here in the door. Let's go ahead and climb into the car and see what all we have going on. Go ahead and push the start button. The car roars to life. We close the door. It is now very, very quiet on the interior, so obviously there is a good amount of sound deadening in this car as a luxury car, which is always appreciated. You, of course, have leather touch points here in your heated leather steering wheel, and even your shifter here on the right side, automatic only. The shifter is not a real selectable shifter. You just kind of move it into whatever gear or push the button to put it in park. Pretty standard there. Getting into, let's say, the updated features for 2024, that's going to be this right here, the updated climate control system. Now we have this cool touchscreen so you can move around where you want your air to go. You have your heated steering wheel options, AC controls, fan speed. You also have your dual zone climate controls with some selectable dials on the outside. A few physical buttons between that. Our heated and ventilated seats, which are quite good, especially the ventilation in this car, so much appreciated out here in the hot desert. We also have some physical buttons above that, which goes for our infotainment system. hazards, more vents, and an infotainment system itself is the sort of standard Genesis Hyundai model. I'm not a huge fan of it. It feels like it takes a few extra steps to get the thing sometimes, which feels kind of unnecessary, but it is fine. It comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, Bluetooth navigation, all that type of stuff. You also get the Lexicon audio system in this car, which sounds just fine as well. Moving on to some of the other details, the main display in front of the driver here, a little bit funky because it's this mix of analog and digital. I can understand what they were going for, maybe trying to make it feel more luxurious, kind of like a watch type of thing. It just seems a little out of place in terms of what it does. Yes, you can still manage everything like you could in any other car and go through all of your various displays, but it's a little bit funky to me. Personally, I'm just happy that the car comes with this heads-up display. That's what I use for most of the time while driving this car, and that's just fine for my purposes. The steering wheel itself is pretty straightforward. Obviously, a lot of buttons here for manually adjusting everything. Your infotainment, volume controls, voice activations, and even your driver assists and cruise control are all in front of you there. On the left side, we have some lighting controls. We have the button here for our locking gas cap, which is always appreciated. And of course, a trunk button as well. Moving over to the middle of the car, we have a wireless charger that is available as part of some of the luxury options that you could be up to you if you really need it or if you prefer the storage pocket. Surprisingly, a USB Type-A port in there and a multi-use outlet port as well. Below that, we have some of the exciting buttons here. So we have an electronic parking brake here. We have the button here, which pulls up our cameras to use, which can be helpful for parking. We have our parking assist and even our brake auto hold traction control button, and more importantly, drive modes. So standard, you have this eco mode, which obviously is going to limit your throttle inputs and can be adjusted here based on both screens for what you're taking a look at. And then we have the comfort mode, which will be the standard drive mode that you'll be in most of the time. That's, of course, going to be best for road trips and daily use. Then there is Sport and Sport Plus. Now, Sport is going to be your street version. This is what you're going to use. It's going to tighten the bolsters, open up that variable exhaust, and stiffen the car up and remap it to make it more responsive. Once you put the car in Sport Plus, this is straight up a track mode. It turns traction control off. The brakes become very touchy. Everything becomes very, very aggressive in this mode. So it's not necessarily recommended for the street, but if you take it to a track, that is what you're going to want to use. And then lastly, of course, a customizable mode. Pretty standard there, but this is the alter ego side of the car. And the fact that you can go from the comfort mode to the sport mode and it changes the car so much is very, very impressive. Other than that, we do have, of course, some storage areas down here, a actual USB Type-C charger, cup holders that don't fit any big cups. We do have the sunroof in this car, which has this one-touch functionality that is quite simple and straightforward to use. All sorts of buttons, storage for your sunglasses, a nice soft Alcantara-like headliner that also has these backlit mirrors, which are pretty straightforward. And that's a quick look at this car. I mean, I think the interior is quite impressive. The value that you get in this car is unmatched. If you're considering anything in the space, a luxury vehicle, or even something with luxury with a bit of sport, this is something to consider. I mean, this car is a contender. So what's it like to drive the Genesis G70? Well, let's get the boring stuff out of the way first. Yes, the car is very comfortable. That should be expected in a luxury sedan. 2, visibility is quite good. I mean, you can see just about any direction you want. Plus, you have that awesome window that shows up on your digital display to show you what's in your blind spot. So all of that is great so far. And the cabin's incredibly quiet. There's no outside noise and very minimal road noise or wind noise while driving the car. Great, we've got it. That's a fantastic luxury sedan you could daily drive. Let's get into the exciting stuff. So Genesis G70, the minute you put this car into Sport or Sport Plus, fuel economy goes down, driving enjoyment goes up. This car gets a little bit louder and the steering gets that much more responsive and more enjoyable because this car is just insanely fast. I mean, the fact that this car is faster than a lot of the European competition is incredibly impressive. So much so, I would like to see a halo car focused on performance from Genesis. I think that would be a lot of fun, especially if it was like a 2-door coupe, more so than the luxury side. Of course, there's the G90 higher trim cars that exist, but I want to see a performance version from Genesis. Now, getting into the other details of this car, the steering tightens up and it feels great. Once you put it in the Sport, the seats itself also tighten their grasp with these heavy bolstered seats to help hold you in place during high cornering G maneuvers, which is a wonderful addition. And the Brembo brakes have a good bite to slow the car down quickly. That makes this car a fantastic car to drive on a back road. Plus, you would be surprised to hear just how balanced this car is. I mean, if you break out the rear end, it does it in such a smooth, gradual way that it's easy to control. I mean, this car is good to drive as a four-door sedan. I am genuinely impressed. And now what that means is this car in its luxury sedan form, you could easily drive this wherever you want it. Take it on long road trips, doesn't matter. But once you get there, if there's a fun, curvy back road, then you flick it into Sport, and now you can have fun in the car while you're there too. I absolutely love that about this car. Now, the downside of that is this isn't the most fuel efficient car on the planet, but who cares about fuel efficiency when you're having fun, right? This car is just so impressive and genuinely good to drive. If you test drive one of these, you won't be disappointed, especially if you're cross-shopping some of the European counterparts. I do have a few gripes about the car. It's not perfect. The first one is going to be the paddle shifters. They are attached to the steering wheel, fortunately, but they are small and can be hard to find. If you're in something like a track environment, you're looking at where you're going and you don't have time to look at the steering wheel. And so you just need to be able to find them and go. If they were a bit larger, they would be way better in my opinion, so you can manually shift that 8-speed. But at the same time, the transmission itself in the Sport mode isn't so bad and isn't really hunting for gears. So at the same time, it doesn't need it that badly. The other thing is the sort of digital / analog display you have here. It's a little bit funky to have both. It looks like it's not sure what it wants to be. I understand stylistically what they were going for. It just seems a little bit out of place. Fortunately, you do have a heads-up display, and odds are, more often than not, you'll be using that instead of the main digital display. Lastly is just going to be the sound. I don't think the car sounds that great. That could be partly due to the fact that it is turbocharged, which is always going to muffle some of the sound that comes out of the engine, or it could just be the sound as a whole, the exhaust layout. I don't know why, but it sounds the way that it does, and I'm not really a huge fan. I think if it did sound better, that would do a lot for this car in terms of making it stand out, because obviously some of its competition have very loud sounds and are very iconic for that reason, and this car just feels a little bit quieter and not quite as iconic or aggressive in that sense. So there you have it. That is a quick look at the Genesis G70, updated for 2024, now standard with Brembo brakes, and has a starting price of $42,000. This thing is serious value when compared to the European competition, and this car is even faster than those cars too, thanks to that sinister alter ego. I mean, this is seriously impressive value from Genesis. If you're in the market for something like this, you can't afford not to check this vehicle out. It is phenomenal. Plus, it's a unique alternative to some of the other vehicles on the road. Now, on top of that, there's certain things like these matte finish paints, which used to be exclusive to some manufacturers, but are now here on the Genesis models. And I love that for these cars. Now, the question then becomes, which one do you buy? Well, personally, I don't think you can really go wrong one way or the other. Obviously, rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive might be determined by where you live, but as far as engine options go, I mean, the new base option is that turbocharged 2.5 that makes 300 horsepower. That's more than the average vehicle on the road right now, so plenty of power for this vehicle. Of course, if you want some more sporty intentions, the bigger motor, like what's in this car, will also make some more power, and if you get the Sport package, you get the limited slip differential, which of course is going to be better if you're considering autocross or even track for your G70, one of the many benefits and awesome features of this car. But you let me know down below what you think of the new Genesis G70. If you could leave me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. And consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.